My name is Jorien Strand, and I'm here to talk to you about genetic engineering, but more specifically, I'm here to talk about genetically modified athletes. My research question was, to what extent should we allow the use of genetic modification in sport? One of the first things I focused on was science and technology. Because what you really wonder is, can we really produce these so-called super athletes? And Ronald Evans, he's a hormone expert working at the Salk Institute of Biological Studies in California. He's shown how genetic modification can increase the athletic power of mice. He produced a group of genetically modified mice with an increased amount of slow twitch muscle fiber, which it's part of the cardiovascular system, and it allows for increased endurance in athletes and mice. And also Jeffrey Goldspink, who's a professor at the University College Medical School in London. He also demonstrated genetic modification capabilities when he demonstrated the up to 50% muscle growth in mice when they were injected with muscle-boosting DNA, and he created these, what he called the Schwarzenegger mice. And so this just proves that we do have the technology and the abilities to create, at least in mice, and which shows that we can create superpowered mice and humans, because we can modify their genes to improve them, whether it's just muscle mass and just to make them stronger, or to increase their endurance for running and stuff like that. But so how it's done is, most gene modification techniques, they involve placing genetically modified DNA inside a virus and then injecting this into the body. The virus then enters the human cells, and its modified DNA attaches itself to the human DNA inside those cells. And this makes it a lot harder to detect than actual drug doping. So that's why gene doping, it's becoming a larger issue in today's sports, because it's so much harder to detect because they don't have the tests yet. The World Anti-Doping Agency, right now they don't have the current means to detect such manipulation in the genes, because this technology is so new that they haven't they're still trying to figure out how to test for it, and because they don't fully understand what they're looking for, and some of the differences are so subtle because they're in your genes. So they haven't come up with a way to actually test and see if these athletes are trying to gain a competitive edge through the use of gene doping. I also looked at the political aspect, which it shows that in the Olympics right now, it's a competition of talent in whatever sport you're competing in, whether it's basketball or track or soccer. But if we allow gene doping in sports, then I believe that it's going to become more of a competition of wealth rather than talent, because the wealthier countries are going to be able to afford these modifications for their athletes, and the poorer countries like Kenya and other countries like that won't be able to pay for their athletes to become genetically modified. So they're going to have to just stick with the actual training and getting improving their athletes the old-fashioned way, instead of using gene doping, because they won't have the money to do this. So it's going to change. Sports won't be the same. It won't be a competition of talent anymore. It'll be more of a competition. It'll be a competition of wealth. So right now, Olympic chiefs, they decided to keep medal winners' blood samples for 8 years, because right now they don't have the capacity to actually test to see if people are gene doping. So they're keeping their blood for 8 years, because they know that their technology is going to advance through these years. So they're going to be able to test these samples years later to check if and see if they had been gene doping, like during that time, when they won the medal. And so this is and when they do that, they're gonna end up if they figure out that someone was gene doping at that time, they're gonna strip their medals away. But by that time, I think that like the countries have already like praised these athletes and they've already looked up to them for so long. And it's almost like a case with like Lance Armstrong, because he won a lot of Tour de France titles and other titles like that, but they figured out with new tests, they had kept his blood, and then later down the road, they ran new tests on it and figured out that he had been using steroids, so they stripped him of his title, and it just caused a lot of, like, people had already been looking up to him, like, throughout the years, so people were kind of, like, ashamed, and they looked down on him after that, because he was a role model to a lot of people, and he had gone through so much and beat cancer, but then just to know that he had, like, cheated his way to it, people, like, looked down on him, but this was after they had already, like, praised him for so long, so it's just like creating problems, and then people won't be able to look up to their country's athletes if they find out later that they were gene doping. And then the third aspect that I looked at was ethics, because I know there is like ways that genetic modification can be used for good, because there are like certain injuries, like people can be out for months at a time and they lose out on training time because of like a runner just gets something, like they hurt their leg. Gene therapy is a method that's quicker to, it heals your body quicker, so athletes will be able to recover from injuries quicker, and it can also help heal diseases because it attacks like certain DNA and it replaces it with the genetically modified DNA that's healthier. But I believe that there's like a fine line between when people are using it to actually help with their injuries and when they're using it to gain a competitive advantage. So I don't think right now that we have the technology to determine the difference between when they're using it for in healing their injuries quicker and when they're using it to gain a competitive advantage. So I don't think like ethically we have we can't tell the difference, so I don't think we should even allow any of it because it's too close to the line that we're not able to tell yet. And then, so my judgment based on all the research that I did was that although some good can come from genetic modification, like healing these injuries quicker and dealing with some diseases, we don't have the proven methods to actually test these athletes yet and determine whether they're using it to heal their injuries and get better and get back into their sport and compete naturally, or if they're using it to just gain a competitive advantage over other countries or other athletes that can't afford it and taking like the talent out of sports and making it more a competition of wealth rather than actually talent. And these are my sources.
Jorien, can you talk a little bit about where you were when you began this process and what got you to where you ended up?
When I first started, I believe it was kind of a general idea that I didn't think that gene doping should be allowed, but I didn't really know why. I just kind of felt that it was an unfair advantage for certain people. And my position stayed the same. It's just a more informed position, because I still think that it shouldn't be allowed. But I figured out that the main thing that led me to that decision was that right now we don't have ways to test to see if these athletes are gene doping. So there's no we can't tell where the advantages are coming from. So I still believe that it shouldn't be allowed, but it's a more informed position on that.
So what specific research from your presentation are we talking about?
It was that I was looking at the Ronald Evans and Jeffrey Goldsmith, they're the tests that they had done and that showed that they could increase the endurance and the muscle growth in these mice, but then they couldn't test for it. It like showed me that we still need to advance our technology more to where we can actually determine when people are gene doping. So I think like until we can do that, we shouldn't allow any of it in sport.
Great, thank you.
And I think your references briefly there. I'm wondering which one of those things brought up the most compelling argument on the opposition, as in you said, you know, there is potential for good, but until our technology advances, we can't allow for like unregulated use of this. So which article gave you the most insight into, okay, what did we know that there was anything positive about it?
The Guardian had an article talking about gene therapy, because I didn't know that I knew you could heal injuries quicker, but I didn't know you could actually like take out, like change DNA to help heal diseases. So I didn't know you could take out the bad DNA and modify it with the modified DNA and switch them out so you could heal diseases too, along with injuries. So that kind of like showed me that there was a positive to it, but we don't have that positive like completely developed, and we don't have a way to show when it's being used for a positive.